Yeah, that's true.
And I am that assistant professor. That was just on a light note. Now over to you if you
Yeah,
want to start or
yeah,
want to wait,
yeah.
whatever.
Please, yeah, yeah. Thanks. So warm good evening to all of you, and welcome to our book discussion series started by Speaking from Margin. Speaking for Margin is a collective for research scholar, activists, and students to engage with contemporary discourse of social sciences. It attempts to build academic solidarity for social justice in higher education. We use this space to build academic solidarity among researchers from various marginal locations to engage with evolving knowledge paradigm of social sciences. We have hosted the research method lecture series and other academic discussion. In our lecture series, noted scholars of social sciences including Professor Nivedita Menon, Professor Rajiv Bhargava, Professor Kancha Ilaya, Professor Meena Ketan Behra, Professor Neera Chandok, Dr. Nasreen Chaudhary, Professor Soumyavrat Chaudhary, Professor Satish Deshpande, Professor Nandani Sundar, Dr. Sudhir Kumar Suthar, Dr. Rahul Burma, and others contributed to this initiative and helped us to strengthen the democratic and critical tradition of knowledge. In our book discussion series, we have hosted the discussion with Professor Joya Hassan's book, Ideology and Organization in Indian Politics, Polarization and the Growing Crisis of the Congress Party 2009 to 19, and Professor N. Sukumar's book, Caste Discrimination and Exclusion in Indian Universities, A Critical Reflections. Today, we all are here to discuss a very important book, Dilapidation of the Rural, Development, Politics and Farmer Societies in India, which need to be discussed with significant implication for the future of critical knowledge and social sciences. P. Sainath, the founder editor of the People's Archive of Rural India, in his interview with Outlook said, quote, "It took me 7 years to place the issue of farmer societies on the agenda of the media, and it met with a lot of hostility. 2 decades of neoliberal globalization have caused a massive growth in inequality. The agrarian crisis has gone far beyond the agrarian. It is a social crisis with people leaving agriculture and not getting absorbed anywhere else. Between 1999 and 2011, 1.5 crore farmers drop out of agriculture, with most becoming landless farm laborers. Lakhs went to other villages and cities in search of jobs that are not there. It is a civilizational crisis now, a crisis of humanity. Lakhs of farmers have committed suicide." Today, we are all here to discuss more about the book authored by Dr. Sudhir Kumar Suthar and why it is crucial at this juncture when the agrarian crisis is looking a theoretically grounded and empirically strong explanation. With this brief background, I would welcome our speaker, Dr. Sudhir Kumar Suthar. Dr. Sudhir Kumar Suthar teaches at the Center for Political Studies, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University. His area of specialization are governance, rural and agrarian politics and movements, political psychology, international relations, and research methodology. He has authored and edited books and chapters and other articles. Dr. Sudhir Suthar has long been outspoken about the issue of farmer suicides in India. In 2017, he wrote an article in The Wire and that he argued that rural in contemporary India is going through an identity crisis and these agitations are a manifestation of this crisis situation. This agitation is a distorted form of resistance against the model of development which is being followed by the Indian state. The political class has to understand the anxiety and address it more sensibly instead of resorting to methods of coercion. Today, we have also with Surendra Bhadrawal as a discussant. Surendra is a PhD candidate at the Center for Comparative Politics and Political Theory. He is working on the neoliberal policies in agriculture and farmers' response in Rajasthan, a study of Gharsana and seeker movements. I feel honored to welcome all the participants, researchers, and friends for taking a keen interest in this important initiative. I am sure that you all will feel enriched with knowledge after the completion of this discussion. I would I welcome you all once again to the discussion, and I would like to invite Surendra to present the core idea of the book And the format of the discussion will be the 30 to 40 minute will be for the speaker and the 10 minutes for the discussant, and the rest we will open the floor for the audience and the those who are participating in the this discussion. Surendra, are you there?
सुरेंद्र ने ज्वाइन किया है क्या? मुझे दिख तो नहीं रहा.
Yeah, he is here. Surendra, over to you. Surendra, can you hear us? Surendra, can you hear us? Surendra, you are muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Oh,
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I am congratulating to Dr. Sudhir Suthar for publishing a good academic book for, especially for the rural agrarian politics and rural society. And the book explains the farmer suicides in India. I think after the 90s, 91, after the accepting neoliberal policies, and this book mainly focus on the idea of self for the farmers community, especially when we talking about the farmer self or individual self for the farming community. Then the book talks about the intermediary caste class peasants, defined here as a peasants in transition, are the deeply embedded farmers who get psychological impacted deeply. Mainly, the argument is here that mostly the studies talking about the farmer suicide only on the behalf of economic ground, but I think this is first book that this book explore the new dimension of the farmer suicide in India, about the psychological effect, and Dr. Suthar explained very well in this book in chapter 2, making and unmaking of self and prestige, rural distress and suicides in India. So in Dr. Suthar in this book talking about the changing space and community in rural India. This book explores that the public space and the communitarian space, especially in the rural areas, rural villages, are shrinking and wiped after the public space in spaces in rural areas have witnessed a qualitative changes in recent past. The traditional public sites like chopals or local festival, or other activities that particularly related to the rural community is really have weakened significantly. The public spaces have either disappeared, or public people have stopped using them. Uh, this is the main argument in uh, changing public space and community in rural India chapter. Uh, the Dr. Suthar also talks about the changing uh, changing mm, political arena of in rural areas, and uh, Dr. Suthar tells uh, about the polarization of rural society uh, after the when the political parties uh, engage with the local government or local bodies government politics, then we see that the rural society divided into uh, divided into uh, divided on the basis of political identity. Previously, the rural society now divided on the basis of politics of political parties. We and after that, the fourth chapter talks about the rural and agrarian development policy and politics. So basically, the in this book, Dr. Suthar talks about the behavioral change that begins after the I think after the 90s. I don't know. Dr. Suthar well explained. I think after me. After the 90s, when we seen the neoliberal policies or credit card, cooperative society, emergence of lots of cooperative society in rural areas, then the distress emerging day by day, and Dr. Suthar also talks about the dependency of farmers community on the new dimensions like MSP, minimum sports price, and more financial activities driven by the nationalized bank and cooperative bank also. So sports price, financialization or consumerism is the other aspects of this book that the new generation and mostly the new generation uh, mm, uh, thinking about the only consumer things. When we going back in the history, we see that the rural society uh, are very interlinked with the farmers community, very interlinked. But now, after the consumerism or after the emergence of new tactics or uh, uh, after the division of society within the rural area, the farmers, or particular the farmer family, or he or she didn't get more support from the community side. They are not getting more support for the community, rural society or community, agrarian community, because they are divided. Previously, I said that they are divided on the political ground, on and the interesting thing is that this book basically talking about the psychological psychological reason for the farmers' suicide in India, and this is I think this is from my side, and we more know about after the Dr. Suthar. Thank you.
Thank you, Surendra, for bringing this stuff. Though book is, I think, South Asia edition will comes later on. So we hope we'll read the hard copy of the book, and whatever I mean, you have the available on the Google. So you have to be able to manage those stuff. So anyway, thank you so much to bringing those things. And now, Dr. Suthar, over to you. Now the floor is yours. You have 30 minutes to elaborate, explain the how this idea to write the book on the farmer suicide, especially when time is not in that, in terms of the that much positive for the whole agrarian community, and why what makes you to write about the book, and give us the bigger picture of the book, in terms of methodologically, in terms of the philosophy, in terms of the way we imagine this whole issue of farmer suicide and the other agrarian crisis, and what other kind of dimension, what other epitome that book offers to the reader. So now, sir, over to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vidyasagar. Thank you, Surendra, for those kind words. It's really nice to see your friends explaining your work on your behalf and summarizing it. There cannot be anything more pleasant than this. And Vidyasagar has been a consistent supporter in this journey. So thank you for organizing this, and thank you for giving me this platform. In fact, this is the first discussion which we are having in India on this book. So that gives me all the more pleasure, because most of you who are here, I can see they have been part of my teaching journey in CPS over the last 7-8 years. So it's really good to see all the familiar faces here. Before I go on, Vidyasagar, do you want me to be bilingual, or you want me to speak in English?
Yeah, I think English works. Most of the, because a lot of students join from the different part of this state, like Odisha and the other.
Okay. So all right. But in case it is needed, you please let me know.
Yeah, sure.
Now, thank you for one point, Vidyasagar, which you mentioned, the South Asia edition and the availability. Many friends have said that it's a book on farmers of India, but if you look at the price of the book, I mean, it is unaffordable almost, and it's like the e-copy is almost 9,000 rupees and the print copy is 13,000 rupees. So frankly speaking, even I can't buy it. So it was said that, why this? There is one factor which I have not spoken before, but now I think I can. So Abhi, I was showing you the tweet where there is an assistant professor, a probable writer, who is, trying to convince the editor that, this is the beauty of this writer, publish it, and so on and so forth. And then finally editor gives one punch and the assistant professor is flat. So I belong to that assistant professor category. Now, before reaching out to this particular publication, I tried to reach out to few publishers who I believe that will provide a cheaper version of the book, and it will be within the reach of all of us. But let me say that their response was very disappointing. In fact, there is one publisher who is very popular and well known in JNU, and I personally spoke to them. I tried convincing them that, you go through the review process and whatever, but I would want you to consider it. Or for almost 1.5 years, I waited for them to give a reply. They never ever bothered to give a reply. Now, it was really disappointing, because one can have the subjective judgments about the content, the quality of the content, and so on. But looking at the topic, the subject of the book, I presumed that they will find it interesting. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And on the other hand, when I reached out to a couple of publishers who would have, published it at a very higher cost, they found it interesting, and they were encouraging in their remarks. that is how it turned out to be a very expensive volume. I don't know whether there will be a South Asia edition or not, but that is the journey of a publisher and an assistant professor working together and struggling. Now the journey started like this. In 2008-9, I joined in Lucknow and started working on Bundelkhand, where farmer suicides issues were being highlighted. And I thought that this is one issue which is very grounded, directly impacting people. So I must engage with something which is more empirical in nature and with which we can connect. That is how I got interested into the issue of farmer suicides. And again, later on, I tried to manage some funds for my field work and study. Miserably failed almost for 5 years. And I didn't know what to do with it because I really wanted to work on this. So what I did, I kept on going to Bundelkhand, talking to people, studying, understanding on my own. And it went on almost for 5 years, but didn't result into anything substantial. Then I joined 2013 in JNU and fortunately got a grant from Indian Council for Social Science Research that time in the form of a major project. And that grant actually helped me complete the field work. The JNU's University for Potential of Excellence program also provided some funding. And that also helped me carry out my work. Now, why I am highlighting these points is that these are some of the parts of journey of any study which you want to carry out, which you are aiming at large. Ek second, Vidyasagar, can you hold on?
Yeah.
Just.
क्या विद्यासागर कैसे हैं?
Hey, सुप्री बाबू, बढ़िया.
कहाँ है? दिल्ली में ही है?
हाँ, रूम में है.
अच्छा अच्छा. रुकिए, लैपटॉप से ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं, कोशिश कर रहे हैं.
हाँ हाँ, आ जाइए आ जाइए.
मोबाइल से हैं यहाँ. ठीक है.
कैसे हैं? मामू डबा से दौड़ते हुए आया. I thought 6 o'clock. निखिल,
सॉरी यार, मेरे ना घर में कुछ काम चल रहा है और उसी में जो है वो बीच में ड्रिल मशीन वो ऑन कर दिया. यू कैन हियर इट, आई थिंक.
Yeah, no worries.
वो इसीलिए मैं उसको बोलने गया था बीच में. सॉरी.
Yeah, no issue.
So the journey started from there, and it was a struggle. But the next struggle which came up was about how to study this topic. How to study this topic in the sense of methodology, because the popular methodologies which we hear around, and there was already a very dominant discourse which was talking about the issue of farmer suicides from the perspective of economic issues. And in 2014, I had organized a conference in JNU which was talking about the agrarian question in Indian politics and its nature and so on, which was attended by P. Sainath, Prabhat, Dipankar Gupta and so on. Unfortunately, when the seminar was being held, it was the same time when Kanhaiya got arrested. It was the same date. So the entire fervor of seminar got diverted because everybody wanted to look into that matter, including myself. But yet, we were able to have a very fruitful discussion on the subject. Now, that led me to two questions. One is that is it enough to have economic factors as the variables to understand the issue like farmer suicides, number one. Number two, if not, then what could be the alternative factors? No, I didn't have an answer. Now, when I was organizing the seminar, I went to invite Professor Srijit Mishra from India Gandhi Institute for Development Research, IGIDR. I met him and had a fruitful discussion. With him, in which he said that, and he was the first person who wrote an article in EPW explaining farmer suicides, linking it with issues of debt, which P. Sainath was also talking about. So he said that, Sudhir, I had a discomfort with this methodology, but I don't know what to do with it. Now that resulted into, compelling me to think about an alternative way of looking at it. The second way which was there was the sociological inquiries which were coming up, looking at the issue of farmer suicides and so on, but they were not very popular at that time. Hence, I kept on thinking of alternative explanations. Now, that resulted into an anxiety with existing conceptual categories, and I was going for a fieldwork to Bundelkhand, and there were reports in farmer suicides about farmer suicides in Bundelkhand. We went to one of the place and we spoke to the farmer, and it turned out to be an accidental death, a case of accidental death than of suicide. Now I asked the person that, you are saying that it was a suicide, but the way the person has died, it doesn't appear to be suicide. So, and then he asked me that, okay, why are you asking this question? I said, I'm trying to understand why farmers commit suicide. Then his response was that in order to be taken seriously, do you want farmers to commit suicide? Then only will you consider it a serious matter. Now, honestly speaking, I had no answer. I was absolutely speechless and confused. I thought, how should I explain it? Because I could see that there are problems which farmers are facing on everyday basis, and the paradigm of suicides is not adequate to explain that problem. But then how do I explain those problems? Which can capture the accidental deaths, which can capture the pain, which can capture the trauma and the suicides as well. Now, friends, I must confess that is where I started really thinking of an alternative conceptual category. And the idea of rural distress was, the origin of the idea of rural distress was linked with that. Now, if you see, the discourse on distress in India is largely about agrarian distress. It doesn't really talk about rural distress. Now, when I'm saying rural distress, what does it mean? Now, in the sixth chapter of the book, where actually I talk about farmer agitations and I talk about rural distress, there is one question which I raise in first chapter, and then I try to answer it in seventh chapter after explaining the nuances of the farmer suicides, is that there is a puzzle. The puzzle is that if the question of farmer suicides is linked with backwardness, economic agrarian backwardness, then ideally the farmer suicide should have been higher in the states of UP or Bihar or Odisha, which are known for their backwardness as per the Human Development Index of the Government of India. But what we witness is the contrary. The farmer suicide rates are highest in the states which are relatively performing better on development indicators: Maharashtra, Karnataka, Punjab. In fact, overall suicide rates are highest in the state which tops the HDI index in India, which is Kerala. Now, What explains this puzzle? Again, I did not have an answer. But what I could figure out, that when I am saying rural distress, it may be a possibility that the indicators of farmer suicides may not be available in the states like UP, Bihar, Odisha, and so on. But that doesn't mean that the sign of rural distress are not present in those societies. They are very much present. In other words, it is possible that because of the distress situation, a farmer may not choose to commit suicide, but the psychological distress may result, it may get manifested into other forms of distress, which includes agrarian riots. Bihar tops the list, which includes increasing communalization in rural areas, caste atrocities in rural areas. UP tops the list, which may get manifested in increasing crime against women. Rajasthan tops the list, or the problem of drug addiction, which you would find almost in all states now becoming a prevalent problem. So the idea of rural distress emerged as a much wider conceptual category, which could incorporate multiple indicators of distress situations while not being confined only to suicides. This doesn't mean that suicide is not a strong indicator. Instead, suicide is an extreme step manifestation of the distress situations in rural India. So what we get in form of recording, in form of NCRB data, is that extreme manifestation. The intermediary factors, the other manifestations, they do not even get recorded in this entire process. Now the next question was that when I am saying this entire process, what is that process I am referring to? Now that actually led me to the second round of the discussion. And one of the discussion was about the nostalgia which you find in rural society amongst the people. So when you talk to people, when you ask them that when the suicide case happened, when the person concerned died, who was the first person whom you approached, who came to help you, and so on, there were two things which we found. The first thing was that the families were feeling really lonely, hopeless, helpless, aloof. And they said that, and there is one of the quotation from which the first chapter begins, that the biggest crime of my husband was that he wanted to give us a good life. So those who committed suicide, they were not people who their family was not able to really relate to. They were the people with whom their families were closely attached. They were considered as good people. And when they committed suicide, it came as a shock to the family and to the society. But at the same time, suicide is considered as a personal phenomena in rural society. Therefore, nobody wanted to talk about it. And the families felt absolutely on their own without any support. And therefore, the family said that, the rural society is no more what it used to be. You don't find that support. You don't find people coming out to offer you help, assistance. Others may have their own limitations in offering assistance, but somehow that sense of support, community support, had gradually gone away. Now, number one, having an overarching conceptual category. Number two, tracking the process. And number three, talking about the sense of nostalgia of a rural society came as the third major thing which I thought of incorporating. Now, some of the friends who helped me during the field work, Lokesh is also here, I suppose. They went to Punjab to collect some of the narratives. And I remember one of the interview in which the person concerned said that "E bande di anak di ladai." Now, when somebody says anak, it's basically the honor, the prestige of a man. Now, when that honor gets impacted, it gets hurt, the person feels aloof, the person feels alienated and gets into a distress situation. Now, when this process of alienation begins, how it impacts the psychology of the farmer as a human being, as an individual, that is the fourth point which we thought of engaging with. Okay, when I'm referring to we, I look at this entire work as a collective work. I don't see it as my individual work. It involves all those people who helped me. It involves all those farmer families who helped, because I understand that it's really painful for them to go back and talk about that same incident. Some of those families had witnessed it many years ago when I went and spoke to them. But it looked fresh. In fact, many times I didn't even realize that I'm talking to somebody who had seen it a couple of years ago. It seemed as if it has happened recently. Now, so the journey, how the human mindset gets impacted, was something which I thought of incorporating in the work. And then came the next challenge, which is how to think of an alternative conceptual category or variable
Sir, you are on mute.
Just hold on, my daughter wants something. Just hold on. भाई एक चींटी आ गई है, एक सेकंड रुक जाओ यार.
विद्या सर, इसको ऑफलाइन करवाना चाहिए.
वेन्यू
म्यूट है आप.
वेन्यू कहाँ मिलेगा?
अरे वेन्यू कहाँ, ड्यू में क्यों नहीं हो सकता है?
अरे ड्यू में आपको लगता है?
ड्यू के राजा हैं आप.
क्या है ये?
अरे नहीं, मतलब
मैंने भी ऑफलाइन के लिए बोला था, लेकिन विद्यासागर बोले कि नहीं, ऑनलाइन ही ठीक है.
नहीं, ड्यू में करवाया जा सकता है, और ड्यू में एक स्पेस इस तरह का एकेडमिक आप लोगों को तलाशना चाहिए.
डिपार्टमेंट
ये एक्चुअली मुझे कई लोगों ने बोला कि भाई ऑफलाइन क्यों नहीं कर रहे हैं, ऑनलाइन ही कर रहे हैं. मैंने कहा शायद ये ज्यादा कन्वीनियंट है, क्योंकि अलग अलग जगह से लोग जुड़ जाते हैं.
एग्जैक्टली सर.
यार, संडे, you know, you have to bear up with me. I don't have a choice. Anyway, so the
वायरल वगैरह भी बहुत फैल रहा है. आई एम डाउन विद वायरल, सो दैट मेनी पीपल अराउंड मी आर डाउन विद वायरल. तो ऑनलाइन ज्यादा ठीक है in that sense.
So then the question of having an alternative variable, and number two, I think with which many of us would agree, that in this entire debate there was one question which was, one variable which was missing: politics. It was seen as if, you know, an economic support, a scheme, some kind of guarantee scheme will solve the problem of farmer suicides. And various policy solutions came up in this form. Abhi, just 1 hour ago, I was speaking to Telangana TV on one of the program where they asked that what is the policy solution, and I said that the first policy solution which we need to think is that politics has to come out of this, that rural needs the minimum support price, minimum schooling, minimum health, everything minimum will do. It's not going to do. It's a fight for maximum. Why minimum? Now it's the same thing which Vidyasagar had mentioned, which I wrote in one of the articles, which created the identity crisis. And this identity crisis operates at multiple levels: individual level, and at the same time at the level of the collective. Now the first chapter, which talks about the self, talks about this journey of individual. Rest of the chapters talk about that journey of collective, how that has transformed. Furthermore, one of the chapter which talks about the policy, there are two chapters which basically talk about policy. One chapter says that how in the last 70 years, except the initial 15 years, when the state policy was trying to keep rural as an integrated category while highlighting the problems associated with it, with the incoming of green revolution, the idea of rural was seen as the secondary category. It was assumed that agricultural development will naturally trickle down and will result into a developed, in quotes, rural India, which actually did not happen. Because the trickle down effect did work in case of some regions, it did work in case of certain sections, but it also left many categories and many regions out from it. And one of the category which I identified in this book, and this categorization comes from the initial categorization of different farmers' communities, which tried to understand it from the perspective of the class, how farmers can be divided, is what is called the intermediary caste class, the peasant who are in transition. So number one, I do take peasant as a category. Peasant and farmer distinction is, peasant is deeply embedded in the cultural setup of a rural, whereas farmers is seen more as an economic category which actually works with the capitalist economic structures. So I use the word peasant, who is in transition, who is trying to become a farmer. There are few who find this process smooth, easy going. There are others who find it terrible, terrific, traumatic, horrible, problematic. Those who find it problematic, who are they? They are also the people who think of themselves as the custodians of the rural society. They think that the rural society is something which they need to preserve, which they need to protect.
Sir, your voice is muted.
So the idea of peasant in transition is basically a story of those who find the transition an extremely painful journey. They want to go up, but they can't. In one of the interviews, I spoke to a lady and I said that when your husband was finding it economically difficult, why didn't you think of, anything else apart from agriculture? Her response was that what else can we do? We can't go to cities and work as laborers because we belong to upper caste. We don't have enough money to venture into a new business. My husband did not have the skill to do it. And moreover, if we would have diversified, what people would say. So we had no other option but to continue with agriculture, whatever it was. And that resulted into him trying to build a better life for the family through agriculture only. Within that, he took a heavy loan, and then the one day bank manager in front of the entire village threatened him that if you don't pay installment in time, we are going to take away your land. He couldn't tolerate it. He kept on thinking about it. His family members said that, you should stop thinking about it. He couldn't. And one day he shot himself. He had 2 daughters. He made a very good pakka house for the family. He bought a tractor. He got everything for the family. And finally, none of this mattered. Now, in case of Maharashtra, Vidarbha, Yavatmal, it was the similar situation. The fact which actually struck me that on an average in that village, one farmer committed suicide every year. Now I asked the person that, did you not feel the need to discuss the issue? They said, it's a personal issue, we don't want to discuss it publicly. Now, why is it personal? Because it impacts the psychology of the individual and the family. So the idea of farmer suicide was not actually as simple as economists had tried to explain it. Of course, it involves economic factors, but it also involves the increasing fractures and ruptures in rural community. The question was, how do we understand, measure that rupture? And for that, the next conceptual category which I found interesting was the idea of public spaces, which actually defined the very idea of rural community, how those public spaces were transformed, how people stopped going to those places thinking that they were more like political spaces. वो तो राजनीति के अड्डे हैं, वहां ना हम जाते हैं ना अपने बच्चों को जाने देना चाहते हैं. Now the very spaces which farmers found extremely informative, spaces to connect with outside world, they found them a space from where they should keep themselves away. How and why is the question. Now, in Vidarbha, I was amazed. It was in the afternoon and around 11 o'clock. And the surprising thing was that 11 o'clock in the village, and we went to meet the families. And friends, you will be amazed to hear, there was not even one person in the streets. What you could hear is the television channels where people were watching some serials and something. Nobody was there outside talking to anybody. And we asked that, why don't you go out and talk to people? Do you not go out in the evening? They said, bahar jaane se kya fayda? It's an invitation to conflict. It's better to stay inside. And then there are some photographs which I have put in the book, where you would see that how in different public spaces political parties had put up their banners as if this particular space belonged to a particular party. And gradually people stopped going to the center, the banyan tree, people ka ped jo beech mein hota hai gaon ke, or other common spaces. The two common spaces which have emerged in the recent past, one is the pawn shop and the second is the electric poles, जो कि लोग मतलब चुरा के रख लेते हैं, and that becomes a center point where people sit. Now when I say people, who are the people who sit? It's basically the men who sit. Now even the ceremonies, they transformed, the festivals, they transformed. So how the self transformed, how the community transformed, and how people felt that political parties, political players, political groups, they have failed them by bringing in those cracks in rural society. And the policies followed by the state, which focused on particular class-based agricultural development, further widened those cracks. Now, one more thing I would say, what Surendra was saying in the beginning, 1991, actually the book doesn't really talk about that. In fact, it takes it before that. The cracks started emerging before 1991. In fact, the discussion on Mandal was actually the triggering point. Why that was the triggering point? Because that is also the time when villages saw marginalized castes asserting themselves. And the custodians, so-called custodians of the rural societies, the intermediary castes, felt it as one step to harm their honor. They felt that now their status quo, their hold on the power in rural society was actually going away. They found it extremely difficult and painful to tolerate it. And therefore, a new kind of counter assertion started. But when they found that even they were not able to do that counter assertion, it results into distress, it results into violence, it results into drug addiction, it results into communalization, and if none of this works, it goes into the direction of farmer suicides. Another trajectory which it could take and which eventually it took was the agitations, the protests. When in some regions, farmers could come together and assert themselves. Now, what about the regions where it did not result into agitations? They are still the hotbeds of distress. And what shape this distress is going to take is the question which we need to really ponder over and think about. So now, methodologically, I found it really challenging to talk to people about somebody whom they had lost. Bringing those questions back, contemplating, and every time I found that nostalgia coming back, where people would say, अब गांव वैसा नहीं है जैसा पहले था, अब लोग वैसे नहीं है जैसे पहले थे. Now some people could move out of the village society, settle down in the nearby township. There were others who had nothing to lose in the village society because in any case they were being discriminated. They decided to move out. There were few others who were left. But I must also highlight that even the marginalized sections, they said that the kind of division which we witness today, it wasn't there in the rural society earlier. There was some kind of inclusion along with exclusion. We did have a sense of exclusion, but at the same time we felt that there was a possibility to assert ourselves individually, personally. Now, you can assert yourself only if you are being supported by a political party. There is no other way by which you can assert yourself as an individual. So, my identity as an individual is being defined by the party, by the leadership, not by me as a member of rural society. Now, this entire process results into, according to different scholars, some say that it results into vanishing the very idea of the village. Dipankar Gupta's famous thesis, where he argued that villages are vanishing because of various reasons. The other explanation which we popularly hear is about the agrarian distress. Utsa Patnaik, P. Sainath and many others have written on it. The third school of thought, especially Surinder Jotka, Mekla Krishnamurti and others argue that a middle range theory is to explain it with the help of the idea of changing villages. It may not be vanishing, but it is changing. Now this change could be in a direction of betterment. Now, in my case, how do I indicate it? And that's where the term dilapidation came up. So many friends again say that it's a difficult term, and whenever we look at the book, we need to Google the term first. Friends, this term, I must also tell you, it comes from English literature. Apart from the Marxist idea of capital and the changing nature of the rural English society, European society, English literature also tried to explain the changing nature of rural society of that time. And a popular term which is used generally referring to the buildings is called dilapidation. Dilapidation basically indicates a building which looks like collapsing gradually. It hasn't collapsed, it is collapsing. You can see, you can observe that it is collapsing, but you don't know what to do with it. Rural areas, rural India, rural society is in that phase of dilapidation. We all see that it is gradually collapsing. It has not gone away, it has not vanished. It very much exists, but it is collapsing. Now, what shape it will take is a question, I think, which is next for us to explore and understand further. So basically, the book is an attempt to bring out some of these complexities. I don't know how successful I have been, but many thanks to all those people who have contributed. Many of those friends are here, and many of you have supported on those difficult moments when I was really demoralized, disappointed, and didn't know what to do, what conceptual category to take. You all were there. So it's a collective work, and I must acknowledge the support which the different families gave. And again, I think Lokesh keeps reminding me that in order to reach out to those people about whom this book has been written, it's better that it should be written in Hindi, which is my next target, and I hope to complete it very soon. And I hope that that will be with you in near future, which will be accessible also. So I would stop here. Vidyasagar, many thanks again for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. I'm really thrilled to see all of you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry for all the disruptions.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for, bringing the grace and the areas which still hidden, and it needs to be, highlighted with courage and with academic rigor, and that I think have been successful to be, bringing those all things. So it has been, I'm just assuming that it has been very difficult for you when you have been part of such a issue which has been sociologically so complex and politically so contested, and then you are trying to theorize or trying to build a very different sort of school of thought, a very different modes of opinion. So obviously we can understand how difficult it is to theorize or to narrate or to just investigate those all issues, especially the issue of suicides. So I won't take much time. I'll open the floor for the participants. So you can raise your hand, or you can also write in our chat box. We can read. So first, Purnami, go ahead.
Can you hear me, Sudhir?
Yes, Purnami, I can hear you. Yeah.
Hi, Sudhir. Firstly, thank you for...
You have to mute yourself, sorry.
Okay. Shall I go ahead? Yeah, firstly, I want to thank you for this enriching talk. And the second thing that I wanted to say was also that I'm grateful it was online, because I was transiting to a friend's house in an auto and I could hear the talk in an auto. So I was grateful for that. The second, and I'm joining from Bangalore for those who do not know me, so I'm very grateful it's online. Secondly, my question is pertaining to the transition that you said about when you study the intermediary caste section, now, actually, when you think about the whole question of agricultural distress, we see a lot of literati. And when I say literati, the people who have actually moved, accomplished accolades in academia, or maybe done their PhDs and so on, going back or done the studies in IIT, going back to agriculture and reinvesting in the field of agriculture. So my question is, do they also go through this kind of distress that we say among the people who are already entrenched in the field of agriculture, or is there an anomaly between both? Like, do the literati who go back also face that, or is just those who have already been in the system who face that? That's my question. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Vidyasagar, do you want to take the questions first and then I answer them in the end?
No, you can answer individually. We have time.
Okay, fine. Yeah, Purnami, thank you very much. That's actually a very pertinent question. And recently there was a discussion on this book by Russian University, and there also one of the participants had asked a similar question, that how do we look at it? And there is an article which I wrote in EPW about the new rural agrarian, and which basically says that the rural agrarian is not what it used to be. It is changing. But the transition which you are talking it is a transition of those who go from rural areas to urban areas and then go through the urban transition and then they come back. So it's like some people also call it reverse migration. Now, this kind of phenomena is also very interesting to look at, because this identity question is very different from the identity question which I spoke about so far. But I must also say that we need to look into the class character of those who belong to this category of reverse migration. I think that is one question which we still need to look into. So there are few who are still, see, transition manifests itself in multiple forms. So the Durkheim's category of suicides, where he explains that transition, it's not actually a unilinear category which impacts the population in a similar manner. So what I am talking about is a one section which feels stuck. But what you are referring to, the category which actually regains their identity by asserting their rural identity, going back to it and then thinking of, building their lives again, which is a new phenomena which is emerging, and which I think another interesting research question. In that article, I made an effort to look into it, but I couldn't really develop it further. I'm trying to understand that more. But thank you for highlighting it.
Shaurya Sood.
Yes, sir. Sir, good afternoon, sir. My question to you is, it was very enlightening. The talk was very enlightening to me, since I know about this area very less. All the conceptual categories were also very enlightening. So the talk about psychology and this as suicide. The important point which you mentioned is the suicide is only the marker of, and there are other markers of distress also, which we seldom take into account. Sir, you also highlighted a very important link between how, you talked about like how farmers face distress and like what are the situation. Like, sir, but my question is, like, how is the oppressor also dealing with the oppressed? Like, when the bank managers are giving loans to, let's say, Adani or say big corporates, they're dealing with them in a different way. And when it comes to the farmers, they are very in different way they must be dealing. So, sir, what is the attitude of the banks in dealing with the farmer? What is their psychology? What is so, sir, that aspect, sir, have you explored in the book, sir, or that I wanted to know, sir? How different is it in dealing with a corporate and dealing with a farmer for these banks?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks. Book talks about this question in terms of how the new private players have entered in the market and how do they see rural as an emerging market. So if you see the recent market research, they all highlight that a big market is there in rural India, and that's what they should concentrate on. So for the private sectors, for the corporates, rural is actually a big market. And the attitude is, it's of two kinds. The first is when you have to give the loan. That time the attitude is very friendly. So farmer is told that you can take a loan even to buy a bicycle, even to buy a mixer grinder, even to buy a cooler, or no more coolers nowadays, AC. And you can buy anything you want by taking a loan. Now, this is a good lucrative offer that you can buy consumer goods and so on. And once you get into that trap, it takes a very different shape. Now, in one of the commentaries which I wrote for EPW, I had mentioned about it in the northern district of Rajasthan, Ganganagar and Hanumangarh, which are the newly emerging hotspots, where you see a lot of private financial companies have come up. And now every farmer has taken loan from most of these agencies, from small household things to the bigger things. Now, this is a new grip which has come up. The chapter on the new allies, I mentioned that there are 3 allies farmers have now. One is the minimum support price, Second is the financialization, where farmers are investing in shares, farmers are investing in satta and so on. And finally, the commercialization, where farmers are also learning more and more about the debt economy. So these were considered the enemies of the farmers 2 or 3 decades ago. Now they are the friends and allies. This has changed, because earlier people would say you can take a loan from a relative but don't take a loan from money lender. Then you can take a loan from money lender but don't take a loan from bank. You can take a loan from bank but don't take it from private corporations. It's the reverse now. The first preference is a private still money lender, because that's an easy option, but then private financial corporations or banks, and if none of this work, then only go to a relative. So the process has changed completely. Yeah, thanks.
Surendra. Surendra.
Thank you, sir. So my first question is about the identity, of rural community or agrarian community. I am also, due to my PhD work, I'm still not dealing with the identity question of farmers, especially in India. So, did you find any insights from the farming community, how they see their identity in this era? And my second question about the changing nature of rural village. Now they are converting in urban village. Still they are villages, but they are now urban village. So how we deal with this? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so see, the identity, there is no uniform concept called identity. It's an identity which is made of multiple identities, and a farmer's identity is actually one of those, and sometimes it's actually negotiating between these. So it can be a class identity, it can be a caste identity, it can be a religious identity, it can be an economic identity. On multiple steps, farmers try to understand this identity in different ways. Now, the question here is, which identity is prominent at what time? Now, for example, when we talk about the protests, agitations, farmers would say that now we are here as farmer. But when you talk about the suicide case, the identity is changed. When you talk about an atrocity, the identity in case of an atrocity, it's a different identity that is at play. So one has to unpack the idea of identity in case of farmers. Regarding the second question, yes, there is a new phenomena, not exactly new, but yes, nowadays it is becoming very prominent, what is called the urban villages. And this particular phenomena of urban village, the only difference is that this village has facilities which are more like urban areas, or it is in the middle of an urban setup. Rest of the things remain the same, like any other village. I don't think that is actually the case anymore, because now even the villages which may not be closely connected with the city may have good facilities, may have a very different worldly outlook, whereas a village in the urban setup may be an extremely conservative, rigid society. So I haven't really done much of work or understood the idea of urban village, but yes, it is a phenomena which deserves more attention and understanding.
Other theories, any concern, comments? Ritambara. Yes, go ahead, Ditambara.
Hi, thank you for this really wonderful lecture that you gave. And actually, I'm very fascinated by this image of the dilapidated building and how it is compared to the modern day village in India. Uh, I would definitely like to go through the entire book, and maybe my question is right now springing from some ignorance of the basic study that you did. But just I was curious to know as to like how many such cases of farmer suicides have you handled in your study, and ultimately have you tried to kind of find out as to how there were different reasons for different suicides, then in that case, which is the reason that really dominates? I would like to know that, like from your kind of analysis, except for the fact that it is the honor which becomes a very important issue for the farmers. So, is it really honor, or really is it economic distress in most of the cases? What is it that is the primary cause of suicides that you found in the study? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ritambra, for these kind words. And so we had met overall 70 families which had seen the suicide cases, and it doesn't include those where the cause of death was not suicide but an accidental death. So most of these cases were scattered into two sites. One is Vidarbha, Maharashtra, and second is Punjab, especially the southern Punjab districts. In UP's Bundelkhand region, which basically the work was done in Banda district, the number of cases were less as compared to other two sites. And so total number of cases which were studied were 70 in that case. But the reporting of the case varies. So there was a case which was reported 7-8 years ago when we did field work. And this study basically started in 2010. And the field work was conducted between 2014 till 2018. And then it took us 4 more years to give it a shape. So now, during this entire period of study, there was one methodological question which I understood, that sometimes it is difficult to say that this is the primary factor, because the whole idea of primary, when we say, it comes from the mathematical modeling of in social sciences, which have become very popular eventually, which tries to explain relationship between different variables and the degree of relationship between the two. And if we find that there is a relationship which is higher in degree, then we tend to argue that this is a very strong factor. I think in studies like these, which involve more like emotions, which involves more like feelings, it is difficult to say what is the primary factor. Now, when I'm saying honor, I would say that it was one of the prominent factors which we found, which the studies before us didn't really try to get into that. And there was another study by Dilapidation Kumar, which he did on Andhra Pradesh, which was published in 2020. That study had also highlighted that how the idea of Atma Samman and the male honor is actually one of the prominent factors. And the other thing which also compelled us to look at this as one of the primary factors is that, as I said, that had economy being the primary factor, then probably we would have seen very different kind of results in other cases of India, and which is not actually the case happening. In fact, if we look at the suicide rates in different states, what we witness is that there is a fluctuation. In fact, in many states, the suicide rates went up when the state went ahead with the loan waiver scheme, and the suicide rates went down even when there was, let us say, crop failure. Now, it is so because, and that's what my explanation is, that what we are looking at is suicide is not actually a spontaneous incidental act. which just happens. There is a process which leads to suicide. And the challenge is how to trace that process, how to narrate that process. In that process, economic variables are crucial variables. Sociological factors are crucial variables. But at the same time, there are alternative, supportive, psychological categories which we need to bring into. And that is why when people ask that, what is the solution which you prescribe? That is a question which emanates from this. And the answer which I give is that what we need to do is we need to create better community spaces in rural areas in order to bring back that feeling of community. Now, this is something which is very different from the traditional policy options like, loan waiver scheme or ensuring minimum income or giving the minimum support price and so on. I believe there is something more that needs to be done. And that comes from this. Now, this cannot be a substitute of MSP. One cannot say that if you create public spaces, that will resolve the problem of MSP. It is not going to do that. But I think that is also something which one needs to consider. And I must also say that farmer suicide cases or suicide cases are there in other parts of the world. And if we look at the psychological analysis of those areas, one of the major things which is there is a penetrating sense of lack of community. Now, how this community building can be done is a question which we need to really think about in this discourse. So far, when we talk about communities, always comes in the form of, developmental policies that for better governance, effectiveness and monitoring, the role of community should be there. Now, when the community itself is not there, what is going to be the role of community? I think what we need to do is to start thinking in terms of community building from scratch. That's how I look at it. I hope I answered.
Sonali.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for this enlightening talk. So you mentioned that honor as one of the prominent factors involved in farmer suicide, and you also mentioned Mandal Commission being the triggering point. So I had a question that is the phenomena of farmer suicide, do we see that more prominent in the intermediary caste for whom honor is important at village level because they are dominant? And also, is this phenomena of farmers' distress also connected to the agitations that we saw regarding Jat reservations or Maratha reservation in Maharashtra and Haryana respectively? And also, I had another question, like you just mentioned about community rebuilding. Then when we talk about community building at village level, then how do we reconcile the caste tensions that involved between dominant caste and marginal caste? So, and how the farmers' distress question can bring those together, or does this question bring those castes far from each other? So,
Sonali, what was the first question? I missed it. Sorry. Can you say it again?
you're not audible.
What was the first question? Am I audible?
Sir, I think caste intermediary के साथ.
What exactly was the question? Okay, let me just start by the third question.
Should I repeat?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay.
Quickly.
So,
You are muted.
yes.
Yeah.
So you said that honor was a prominent factor in the farmer suicide, the question of farmer suicide. So can we also conclude that this question of farmer suicide is more prominent in the intermediary castes, which are also dominant at the village level? And do we also see a relation between the farmers' distress and the agitations that we saw regarding Maratha reservations or Jat reservation in Maharashtra or Haryana? That was my question.
Yeah, Sonali, thanks. In fact, the second point is something which I and Manish in the article actually regarding the recent farmer protest try to argue. That the identity question is very much there. And if you see the Jat agitation, the Patel agitation in Gujarat, the Maratha agitation in Maharashtra is actually a manifestation of that. Now, when we say intermediary caste class,
The honor question is there amongst the other castes and classes also. But the intermediary caste class groups, they find it difficult to handle that question. Because other castes and classes, they do have option of rebuilding their honor either by moving out of the village space, going to the nearby township and so on. These intermediary caste class groups find it extremely difficult to move out of that rural setup. So the only place where they think that their honor can be regained is that only rural society. So they are the ones who actually want to retain that status quo as well. So now finally, how the caste question can be resolved. Honestly speaking, there is no model answer to this question. I think that is what the democratic process is all about, where we need to actually think about it. But at the same time, I think it is also necessary to start thinking in terms of building, developing community spaces which are more equitable and based upon the principle of justice. Creating segregated spaces is not the answer. Now, how it can be done, I'm sorry, I don't have actually an answer. I'm still thinking about it. Thanks.
So we have two questions in chat. Thank you, Sonali. Vishnu is asking about elaborate the idea that rural needs to come out of minimum and what can be the way forward. And Sahwaz, he congratulated you. And his question is, you mentioned that this dichotomy of peasants and farmers, where farmers are economic category, whereas peasants as culture. Is it also about farmer as well of? Are you suggesting that these farmers are using suicide as a political tool of resistance for socio-economic and political claims as well as honors of the well-off farmers?
Thank you. Vishnu, if I can say it like this. When I am saying, when I was talking the idea of MSP with one of the televisions, and I said that MSP is not a minimum support price only. It's actually a minimum support package. So the state has to come out with a full-fledged package when it says support. Now, Vasavi, I think, if I remember it correctly, she used the word maximum support package. Maximum support packages. So there has to be more and more state support. Now, when I'm saying this, what does it mean? It means that there is one question which the government has not really pondered over, is thinking about the question of quality rural life. The government vision of rural development is still of ensuring that bare minimum standard of living. I think that is the image which has to be broken. It's not that bare minimum. It's about thinking of a quality life in rural area. Now, we will ask the next question, what is a quality life? Let me elaborate a couple of points. We don't think about a park in a rural area. We don't think about gym in a rural area. We don't think about sports facilities in rural areas. We don't think about quality hospitals in rural areas. So the package has to be about quality life. And the second thing, Shahbaz, I won't say political tool of resistance, but certainly as one way of resisting. Now, this resistance can be personal, community-centric, or the family-centric. Political tool, I would not want to use that word. And I didn't understand the second point. As well as owners of these well-off farmers, I don't think the well-off farmers are not actually the ones who commit suicide. It's the intermediaries who are stuck. They are the ones who suffer with the question of honor. Well-off farmers have the option. They can go to nearby district, buy a new home there, start a business there, and they can switch over. They can go every day in a queue, in a car, come back on a bike, they can come back. The intermediaries, for them still urban is a dream, an unfulfilled dream.
So I think.
And Vidyasagar, I must thank Professor Sanjeev Reddy, who is there. Professor Sanjeev Reddy was there in University of Warangal Head of the Department Political Science. Sanjeev, thank you very much for joining in. I was thinking of saying this, I kept on missing. Sanjeev has been a constant supporter all this while. Thank you for joining in. Yeah, Vidyasagar.
Yeah. So I think it's 5:34. We have to wind up the session. So behalf of Speaking for Margin Collective, would like to extend my gratitude to Dr. Sudhir Suthar and we congratulate you for this book, and we hope the many more will come in future. And one thing I would also like to highlight, and I thought I would highlight in the beginning of the discussion, but I forget to mention that when we started this collective, you were the first speaker who shared the platform, and now we have hosted more than 20 plus discussion with different faculties and researchers. So thank you so much, sir, for your support, consistent support and encouragement what we are doing right now. So again,
I remember that, Vidyasagar, but thanks to you, it's really nice to see the platform growing and so many people connecting. Thank you to you. Thanks to you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. So thank you all for joining this session and contributing and participating in the discussion. And stay tuned with us. We'll come with other programs soon. So again, thank you so much, sir, and thank you all. Stay safe.
Thank you everyone for joining in, and I look forward to your comments. You can write an email.
Yeah.
I think most of you have my email. So feel free to comment and criticize also if you have. Feel free to write to me. And I think there is another discussion which Supriyo is planning, which would be offline.
Yeah,
so I would be happy to see you all in person there.
Yeah, sure. So the idea behind doing this online, because a lot of students actually participating in a different part. So we can't do it offline because otherwise they will miss that session.
And thanks, Surendra, for elaborating and bringing in that in. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye. See you.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. We can't take it more. Any question?
Just I wanted to ask you only.
Yes, sorry.
Yes, I wanted to subscribe. How do I subscribe to your channel like, or the collective for future updates? Like, how do I know? It was just an accident I came to know about this talk.
Sorry, there's no subscription you needed. We have just one collective. You can follow our page. We have the LinkedIn page.
On
Facebook page we have. You can just search Speaking of Margin, will get the results. And we have our internal team. We can add you in the WhatsApp group. So you can drop me you can drop your contact number, speakingformargin@gmail.com.
Okay.
I'll add you in the group.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you, Surendra bhai. See you.